Joining us live from Islamabad, Pakistan is journalist Javed Rana. Good to see you, Javed. Now, Ireland, Norway and Spain have officially accepted to recognize Palestine as a separate state and a major snub for Israel. What can you tell us about this latest development?
I think this is a diplomatic uprising against the apartheid state of Israel. It indicates that the traditional supporters of Israel, they are getting fed up. They feel that Israel is no longer part of the solution. It is the biggest part of the problem. And I think that is what we have heard these European leaders, that they feel that since the genocide is being conducted inside Gaza, and therefore basically Netanyahu is working on a project to depopulate. I mean, that is the impression, to depopulate Palestinian, and then the chances of a peaceful settlement are being shut. That is the impression I got from their conversation. So I think in that context, it seems that the international public opinion has finally come down very hard on Israel. I expect there is going to be a chain reaction. These are just 4 countries to begin with. I think 2 more countries are going to follow the suit within days and within the next couple of weeks. And those are Malta and Slovenia in Europe. Malta is in the north of Africa. So and then it indicates that this will also bring more pressure on the other Western countries, that they need to do something to bring an end to this genocidal war. Despite the fact that Americans just projected themselves that they are against of Israel launching ground and in the thickly populated Gaza city, nonetheless, we have witnessed that Israel continuing with its genocidal war, killing hundreds and dozens of others every day, killing people, innocent children, bombarding hospitals. I think the world has witnessed in these last 7-8 months that Israel, since in a very systematic manner, is conducting genocide of Palestinians, and the world no longer can put up with this situation, and it could possibly lead to the Third World War. Because look at a bigger scenario: if there is a war between apartheid Israel and Iran, then Russia would be there to back up to support Iran. And then Americans will support apartheid Israel, the Europeans will support Israel. So I think the world is on the threshold of a Third World War. And obviously this sneaky credit goes to the Netanyahu, who has a systematic plan, a strategy to initiate a war between Iran and the US. So in that context, I think this may be a very small step, a baby step on the part of these four countries. But that is a message to everyone else in the world, and more particularly to the Arab world, more particularly the countries within the shadow of the so-called OIC, all the Muslim countries, that they are the ones they need to take a lead. They need to give full sovereignty to the Palestinian state. This is the highest time, because if the Muslim countries, under the shadow of OIC, if they build up pressure, if they recognize Palestinian state, that would bring a lot of pressure that will bring a lot of pressure on the Americans and other European countries who are not willing to recognize Palestinian state at this particular point of time. Just a few weeks ago, the Americans vetoed two-state solution in the UN Security Council resolution. And we have heard repeated rhetoric from the White House, from the US President Joe Biden, that they wanted two-state solution as per 1967 borders. But practically, when the resolution was moved in the UN Security Council, it was vetoed by the Americans. And that's a shameful. So I think it is a historical day for the Palestinians, but it has come at a great cost with the blood of Palestinians. We have seen 45,000 people have been killed, if we include those who are still under the rubble. And every next day, this genocidal war is continuing relentlessly.
Now, what are the potential economic and political implications for Palestine following this recognition?
Understanding of the situation is that since the funding was choked by many Western countries, particularly the Americans, or at least it was reduced after Israel put a lot of pressure on them to reduce this funding, calling Hamas and Palestinian soldiers as terrorists. With the recognition of Palestine as a full sovereign state, I expect that many countries, particularly those countries who will recognize the Palestine as a sovereign state, they would come up with the funding. I think that would be that is what Palestinians need also, because Israel has been choking all their funding, particularly during last 1 year. So I think in that context, it will have great impact. And also we have to see that before that, many countries also basically sent the investors of Israel back to Tel Aviv, and particularly those of the Latin countries. We have not seen similar reaction from the countries, Muslim countries, who had given Israel their recognition. So I think it is just a beginning. It will have a chain reaction. Sooner or later, it will put a lot of pressure on Americans. It will put a lot of pressure on the apartheid state to wind up this dirty operation inside Rafah and elsewhere and go for a peaceful settlement. On the other hand, we have heard Israelis saying no, that it would reduce the chances of peaceful settlement and we will go all out against Palestinians in Gaza. They are already doing it. My understanding is that this is going to be a turning point in weeks and months to come, so far as the Israel's one-sided war is concerned. And we have to also see what is happening inside Gaza. Israeli military has lost it terribly, particularly since it went into Rafah crossing border and the joining area. We have seen that Israel is facing, it has suffered a lot of casualties. Dozens of its soldiers have been killed by the Hamas soldiers, by the Islamic Jihad. They had suffered booties and they were trapped right inside over there. And they are operating, by the way, overland. So far as the tunnels of the Hamas are concerned, they are very much intact. They have been operating from there. It is a hit and run strategy with which both Islamic Jihad and more particularly Hamas have come up with. And that strategy has turned out to be very, very successful. It is not less than a miracle that Hamas insurgent group with 30,000-40,000 soldiers has survived without weapon supply. It has been blocked, Gaza has been blocked from the port side, and Israel has not been able to eliminate Hamas as a political force, as a military force. Nonetheless, every next day we hear rhetoric from Tel Aviv, from the Netanyahu and his cronies that they are very close to the victory. They are going to physically eliminate Hamas. Nobody has accepted this political rhetoric from Netanyahu. But we have to see what is the reason why West is still giving in to Netanyahu's demand. What is it that Israel has because of which the Western leaders are being exploited, they are being blackmailed? That is a bigger question. Despite the fact that in Western countries we have seen that there is a surge in anti-Israeli public opinion, something Israel calls it as an anti-Semitic, still portraying itself that it is a victim, telling the world that it is a victim of Hamas, it is not aggressor. It's hardly 11 to 1,200 people inside Israel were killed on October 7th. Most of them were the settlers and other military officials, soldiers. Nonetheless, Israel is trying to project itself that it is a victim. It is a complete nonsense. Today's decision, this diplomatic uprising, does indicate that the world is not accepting the nonsense that we hear every next day from Israel. The support base of Israel is shrinking day by day, and many governments who are supporting Israel at every cost, at the cost of their adverse public opinion, they are most likely to lose their next chance to be in the government in the Western countries. So I think this is indeed a great achievement by the Palestinians, but certainly it has come at a very great cost.
So which other European Union countries are likely to follow the lead of Ireland, Norway, and Spain in recognizing a Palestinian state?
It's hard to predict at this particular point of time, but certainly I think Slovenia, if I'm pronouncing it, and in Europe, and Malta, I think there are reports suggesting they are going to follow the suit. And then I think my understanding is that since Latin American countries, these semi-communist and socialist countries, they could possibly be next in line. The reason being is that they have already shown kind of the resistance that other countries have not been able to show to the Israel. They recall their investors, they expelled Israel's ambassador from their countries, and I think they could be the next to recognize Palestine as a sovereign state. And again, there would be chain reaction from other countries. Obviously, smaller countries would start recognizing Palestine. Then the bigger countries who actually holds powers in the UN Security Council, at the end of the day, they will have to accept this reality that Palestine, there has to be two-state solution. But the bigger question is that since Americans are pursuing a very sneaky diplomatic line, and behind the scene they are pursuing a policy whereby they want Israel and Palestine to have a negotiated settlement in a manner that goes much beyond the demarcation of 1967 war. So that means Israel is keeping an eye on to have entire Jerusalem, both east and western part, and again that will be deviation from the international consensus. That is their strategy. And similarly, Netanyahu has time and again said they also want to further occupy West Bank. And I don't think this is in any way is acceptable. Netanyahu is pursuing this agenda in a manner I think which is being now perceived within Israel's power elite that Netanyahu is also becoming liability for them, because this will also, there will be internal debate in Israel that this diplomatic uprising Netanyahu will be held responsible, will be held accountable for this. I think this is a critical setback also for Netanyahu back at home, but at this point of time, since there is a fascist government, a fanatical government is in place in Israel, so they will continue with this war no matter what happens until and unless USA come up with a plan to put the pressure in a meaningful manner on Israel. That I don't see happening in coming days and weeks.
What are the historical relations between these countries and the Palestinian territories?
Norway, you may recall in the early 90s, they had the Oslo Accord. They were part of a peace process. And then the Palestinian state, a semi-state, was recognized. And Norway had facilitated. And I think that is also a part of the reason that Norway made this announcement to recognize the Palestinian state, because Norway found itself to be upset with. In a very phase-wise manner, there has to be a first state rights to the Palestinians. That has not happened. And Norway did feel that at this particular point of time, when Netanyahu is going ahead with this genocidal war, and it is too much to expect a peaceful settlement. Therefore, these countries are not taking a unilateral stance. And that is why we have seen that other countries are also following the suit. And that is a great achievement. But in this is a brief historical context that I'm giving. But I think in bigger context, which the world does know now more about, and that is about the history, how Palestinians are being expelled after each war which was imposed upon Palestinians from 1948, 1947, and then 1967, 1973, and from late 80s and from 90s to onwards, and from 22 onwards, and particularly when the Hamas government was installed in 2006, the world has seen repeated wars, onslaught on Palestinians. Unilaterally, they've been bombed, they are being killed time and again, their generations are being eliminated. And I think since it is no longer viable for the world, particularly for the many European countries, to tolerate this situation, because their own people are turning against them. Therefore, I think in that context, now people are more aware about the historical context of Palestine. They were not aware of it before October 7th. I think that credit does go to the Hamas soldiers, because they have made the world realize that they are no longer would put up with the situation, the genocide which Israel was conducting every next day, even before October 7th. This is nothing new that has happened. Now it has happened at an industrial scale. That is why now we have seen that Gaza is in the international spotlight. But again, right now, as we speak, Israel should have withdrawn its forces. Because the situation has gone from bad to the worst so far as the humanitarian crisis in the Gaza is concerned. 400 to 500 hospitals have been physically eliminated. They've been attacked. People were burned alive. They were buried alive. 14, 15 centuries ago, this used to happen. We have seen the mass graves in Gaza. And there is clear evidence that those people were buried alive. What is happening in the world? Why Israel has been given this immunity from any prosecution? We have seen the initial prosecution case of International Criminal Court, and then Americans are again opposing it. They are threatening to sanction the officials of International Criminal Court. That is unacceptable elsewhere in the world. The bigger question that I was earlier on raising as to why these leaders are putting up with the situation. My understanding is that Israeli intelligence and their network in the Western countries, particularly in the US, they've been blackmailing US congressmen. They've been blackmailing many officials who met in the Syrian region. They have their private videos, and that is where they are being exploited. And they've been giving them funding for the electioneering, for the election campaign. I think that is the fear that they believe they would lose it. And because of these similar patriotic infiltrations, we have seen that US Congress, by and large, has been supporting Israel's political dirty agenda on the Middle East. Now, we have seen that there is also division within the Congress. We have also seen that many officials within the White House, within the US administration, they are resigning over this genocidal war. We have also seen that one of the American soldiers, he burned himself in front of Israeli embassy as a mark of protest. So the heightened level of world awareness, I think that is the biggest factor which is moving governments now to recognize Palestine as a full state. Again, I think the point that I made earlier on, at the end of the day, the West will have to accept the reality that the Palestinians are also human beings like elsewhere in the world. They, at this point of time, they don't have rights unlike even the animals who enjoys rights in the West. Palestinian people don't have those rights. And who is responsible for this? It is Netanyahu and his cronies. So I think in the long run, I think the Palestinians would certainly have their sovereign state.
Views and politics may align between the countries, but how do the citizens of Ireland, Norway, and Spain view their government's decision to recognize a Palestinian state?
I think since the international opinion elsewhere in the world, everywhere in the world, in fact, that has heavily turned in favor of Palestine, because people have been watching live this genocidal war. And everybody, we are all human beings. When we see that people are being killed, children are being killed, mothers are being killed, elder population is being killed, hospitals are being bombed, UN offices are being bombed. More than 130-40 UN staff members have been killed. More than 140 or 50 journalists have been killed. Everyone is being killed. The humanitarian aid convoys are being attacked. They are not being allowed to go inside. The 1/3 of population of the Gaza is being starved to death. Dozens of people inside Gaza have died because of lack of food. I think when people see all this kind of stuff, when they watch televisions, they do form an opinion. I think that is one of the also leading factor about which these four countries were conscious, and that is why they have reached the conclusion to give Palestine as a diplomatic recognition. I think that is a great achievement, but it has come at the cost of the miseries and the genocide of the Palestinians.
Javed Rana, thank you for joining NewsHour and thank you for your analysis. Now continuing with our world news.
The growing tide of anti-Israel sentiments. What you see behind me is just tip of the iceberg of what is happening in the country. More than half of $52 billion black CIA budget is spent on espionage network in Pakistan. How would you handle it?
The US has looked upon Pakistan as an ally at one point and then as an enemy at the same time.
That is going to be the first legal reason on the basis of which he is going to be instantly ousted by the Supreme Court of Pakistan.
Joining us live, Javed Rana, who's an expert on politics and geo-strategic issues.
In the world politics, which is not being driven by any moral principle, it is being driven by the hard geo-strategic realities. In a broader picture, more countries would aspire to have nuclear weapons.